today's world is a little bit of an uncertainty in financial issues. So let's listen to Richard Hansen talk about how we can revolutionize financial management.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Richard Hansen. I own and operate Revolution Financial Management. We have offices in Palmdale, Pasadena, San Diego, and we're about 6 to 9 months away from having a new location set up here in the Santa Clarita area. A little bit of background on me. I'm born and raised here in the high desert. This is home for me. I am a millennial. I'm an older millennial, but I'm still a millennial. Being born in 1984, I'm part of the millennial generation that's coming up into power right now. And so, although a lot of people look at me and say, you don't seem to look or act like a millennial, I still am. I was born and raised up here in the high desert, came from a single-parent household, grew up in the system, and really wanted to make a difference in my life and in my future. And so a lot of you guys might recognize me. I was, for the last 15 years, I was the regional vice president for Bank of America Merrill Lynch locally up here in the high desert. And so I worked with a lot of the larger businesses, the doctors, dentists, lawyers, engineers, a lot of the hospitals. I would be working with them. I was caught up in a large layoffs in 2016, and I went from being the big guy on top to figuring out, wow, how am I going to support my family and pay my mortgage on unemployment? So I decided to take control of my destiny again and decided to start my own company. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to give a financial education to people. I think that when people are educated, in fact, I know that when people are educated, they can make informed decisions for themselves. And one of the things that we're not taught in higher education is about money. We're not taught about how to use money. We're not taught how it can help us or it can hurt us. I mean, to give you an example, my wife is a local school teacher, and when she graduated college, she had over $50,000 in student loan debt, and we calculated she'll be out of debt by the time she's 90. And she's looking to me like, you're going to retire me, sweetie. And I'm like, I don't think that was the plan. But I mean, these kids aren't getting educated, and especially with the Generation Z. I have a couple teenagers at home that are Generation Z, and I'm really focusing on helping them understand how money works. Okay, So again, my company is called Revolution Financial Management, and again, we're focused on revolutionizing the way that financial information is brought to working class Americans. When I worked at Bank of America Merrill Lynch, if you didn't have at least $500,000 of investable assets, or if your business wasn't performing at least $1 million in gross sales, we wouldn't even talk to you. Today, those limits are actually higher. So where does the working class American go? The construction worker, the teacher, the nurses, the local sheriffs, where do these guys go? And so that's where I found that there was a large group of working class Americans that were being neglected by our industry, and I was not okay with that. So again, speaking about our industry, I know that middle Americans are an underserved marketplace, and that's my target market. I want the working class American. I'm not going to say go away rich guy, because they still get divorced over money and still pay too much in taxes, but I want the working class. I want the folks who are normally don't have the amount of cash sitting in their bank in order to sit down with these large investment firms. The business model of all the big firms, not just Bank of America Merrill Lynch, but JP Morgan, Edward Jones. Have you guys heard of those companies before? Yeah, and so all of those companies are designed towards focusing on the affluent and the wealthy, leaving a lot of people behind to try and figure that out, trying to Google it on their own. And if you've ever tried to Google something that you don't know about, it can be pretty difficult. So there is there's an increasing need for financial education, and we believe that we are the change in the industry that's coming. So we've set out, and we've had decades and decades. My partners and I have figured out that it really comes down to 6 things that people need to understand when it comes to financial literacy. You got to understand cash flow. What's coming in, what's going out. You got to understand that you have to have an emergency fund. 3 to 6 months of your income needs to be set aside for emergencies. It's not a matter of if an emergency happens, it's when it's going to happen. Anybody have kids, grandkids, right? There's always something that comes up. And so we need to make sure that we have those emergency funds in place to pay for those things. We talk about debt. Consumer debt is just absolutely bananas in today's economy. The student loan debt is ridiculous. And so we're really focused on helping people reduce their debt and ultimately eliminate their debt. Then we talk about protection, not just life insurance, but long-term care, disability, creating protection for the family. My dad passed away when I was 18 years old, so I was able to move out and get a job, and I wasn't a burden onto my mom, but my mom still had an 11-year-old boy to take care of, and my father had no life insurance on him. So my mom struggled from the moment that my dad passed away up until my older brother was able to move out, simply because my dad had no life insurance. Social Security did pay my mom $250 to bury my father. I kind of chuckle at that because what can you do with $250? I mean, that's a real night out with the real fun night out with the wife. Building wealth, we want to strive to outpace inflation. Everything, it costs so much more. I remember being a teenager and driving to Albertsons, which was my first job, and gas was less than $1 a gallon. And I remember my mom always talking about that when candy bars went from a nickel to a dime. She was outraged. She's like, I'm going on a candy strike. I'm never going to eat candy ever again. And now you can't get a candy bar for, under $1.50. And so your wealth and your savings have to outpace the rate of inflation. So we talk about that. And then lastly is preserving wealth. We have to leave a legacy for our children and for our grandchildren. Okay, and that comes through wills, that comes through trusts, that comes from avoiding probate. Probate should be the scariest thing that comes out of any baby boomer's mouth. Okay, because if you don't have your estate set up, it's going to be lost. Okay, two really sad examples are Aretha Franklin and the artist that was known as Prince. Aretha Franklin had no will, no trust, and she was worth, I want to say, $50 to $100 million, and more than half of that got sent to probate. Prince, over $200 million is what he was worth. He died, two and a half, maybe 3 years ago. His estate is still in probate. His family has not received a dime of his money, simply because he didn't have his estate preserved. So these are very, very crucial things that we talk about with families, and we create a 6-step plan addressing all 6 of these issues. Of course, every family is different. If I sit down with a young couple with babies, we're not going to be talking too much about family succession, but it's still going to come up, versus I sit down with an older couple they're empty nesters and they're thinking about enjoying their golden years, different type of conversation. So we do have to tailor it for their needs, okay? So one of the things I also learned working in corporate is that I was stuck only working with the products and services that I had available at my fingertips. So, for example, if you only have a hammer to work, if you're a carpenter and you only have a hammer to work with, everything looks like a nail. And it's like, wait a second, I'm trying to, cut this wood. How am I going to do that with a hammer? Well, you only have a hammer, so you better start swinging away. So when I worked for corporate, I realized that my hands were always tied because there were certain products and services that I didn't have available at my fingertips. So now, what I've done, now that I'm independent and I own my own business, is I work with the entire industry. And so I work with very large companies that most Americans are familiar with: Transamerica, Voya, Nationwide, Jackson, Prudential, just to name a few. And these are the companies that I work with. And the cool thing is we've found a way to provide advice and service for the customer 100% free. We get paid on the back end by these guys. They pay us out of their marketing dollars for bringing them a qualified client. They're going to spend money on professional athletes to do their commercials. Okay, and so what I want to do is I want to go in after that money, because marketing is where the money's at. So that's where I'm going to go in. I'm going to take their marketing dollars for bringing them a client. And so what I do is 100% complimentary to the consumer, and that's a very big value add. Okay, a little bit of education, because again, we're all about financial education. I want to teach you guys a little bit about a couple financial concepts. And the first one is time, okay? Now, when it comes to time, time can either be your greatest ally or it can be your worst enemy when it comes to growth on your savings. And so not all of us are going to fit into into one of these two categories, but again, humor me, this is just conceptual. In the diagram, I have two individuals, person A and person B. Person A has 40 years to save. Person B only has 38 years to save. And this is an example of someone saving $5,000 a year in a tax-deferred account earning 10% interest. I use these numbers simply because it's easy math, okay? So over 40 years, person A is going to have saved $200,000 of their own money. Person B started 2 years later. They kind of put it off a little bit. Oh, Richard, budget's kind of tight right now. I can wait a year. I can wait 2 years. And so they started 2 years later. So they're only saving for 38 years. And again, $5,000 a year is $190,000. Okay, so most people are looking at me like, Richard, well, that was only a $10,000 difference. Big whoop. Well, hang on a second. We know that through compounding interest that it's way more than $10,000. At the end, person A is going to walk away with $2.2 million. Person B walks away with $1.8 million. That 2-year wait cost person B $400,000. I don't know about you guys, but in Santa Clarita, I could very easily find a way to spend $400,000. Anybody else? Right? There's some really nice vacations that we can take, really nice cruises that we can take for $400,000. So it's a cute little question, but if you have a hole in your pocket, when do you sew it up? And obviously, you want to sew it up as quickly as possible, okay? Albert Einstein talked about the Rule of 72. He called it the eighth wonder of the world, okay? And the Rule of 72 talks about compounding interest. A lot of people know it as the accountant's rule, okay? And basically, you take the number 72 and you divide it by the interest rate that you're receiving on your money, and the answer is the number of years it takes for your money to double automatically without having to add any more money to it. So this is an example of $10,000 at different rates of return. And we're going to use someone in my age bracket, someone who's 29, who's out of college, working, and needs to start saving. So we're going to use a 29-year-old individual with $10,000. They're going to put money in and walk away. You guys follow me? Cool. So 1%, real easy. 72 divided by 1 is 72. I'll let you guys cheat. The answers are up there. So if a 29-year-old kid puts $10,000 into their savings account at Bank of America, maybe they're earning 1%, maybe on a good day, okay, that money's going to double 72 years later. How old are they when they see that money double? 101. Maybe they're not even alive, okay? 4%, 72 divided by 4% is now 8 years. So now that money is doubling. That actually should be, I got to fix that. Wow. So that's 18. I got to fix that. I'm glad I caught that. So it's not 8 years. It's 18 years. So forgive me, but put a little 1 in front of the 8. So 4%. 72 divided by 4 is 18. So now the money doubles every 18 years. So the 29-year-old is going to see that money double twice by the time they're 65. Not too bad. Let's just say the stock market was pretty good during their working career in their 401k, and they got 6%. 72 divided by 6 is 12. So now that money doubles every 12 years, okay? That $10,000 doubled 3 times to 80 grand. Let's just say, and then again, this is not going to be my battle cry. I'm not guaranteeing, hey, we're going to get you 10% rate of return on your money. But again, 10% is an easy number to understand. 72 divided by 10 is 7.2. So now that 10,000 doubles every 7.2 years. By the time this individual wants to retire at 72, they have well over $500,000. That 10 grand doubled and doubled and doubled and doubled. And they didn't have to add any more money to it. So it's really important for us to educate and help people be aware that you want to save your money on the right, not on the left. Because on the left is where you find the banks. And I'm guilty. I sold those products. And I've repented of my sins. And I've asked God to forgive me. So now I'm teaching families how to save money and get a higher rate of return on their savings, not being stuck on the left side and your money's not doing anything. Okay? So, Richard, hey, I want good rates of return, but I'm scared. The trade war that's happening between us and China right now, the stock market's doing this, and it's kind of like a heart attack right now. Well, yeah, if you're in the stock market right now, you're going to get hit pretty hard right now. I mean, yes, the market rebounded yesterday and today a little bit, but still, overall, we've gotten kicked in the teeth pretty hard, at least in the market sense. So there's 3 different types of options for your money, and again, this is in broad terms. Nothing that I'm presenting to you guys today is meant to be specific investment advice. We sit down one-on-one with our customers and give them specific advice, but this is just overall broad terms. So there's a fixed account, right? This is your savings account. This is your CD. You're going to get a fixed rate of return. It's not going to be very much growth, but at least you know when Armageddon happens, your money's still going to be there. Okay, so that's the good news on a fixed account. The bad news is that you're not going to see much growth, if any at all. Okay, a variable account. This is what's happening in the stock market right now. Anybody remember 9/11 when the World Trade Centers were bombed? Okay, everybody woke up and half of their 401ks were gone. Their 401ks turned into a 201k. Just kidding. That's like not really a thing, but it's a joke. In 2008, the mortgage crisis, okay, we had almost a 50% loss in the market there as well. So yes, you can have a 2009 where the market was up 30% and everybody was screaming and super excited. The Trump bump, when Trump came into office, the market was up, and it was an amazing time to be in a variable account. But you got to remember that when the market goes up, it can also go down. And then the last option is an indexed account. You can see in the background that the stock market's still going up and down. But how an indexed account works is when the market drops, you're going to stay flat. You're not going to grow, but you're not going to lose. You're going to keep your principal protected. When the market goes up, you go up with it. You can lock into that new high when the market drops, and then you can stay flat while the market stays down until the market goes back up, and then you go up with it. So it's literally a staircase to your financial goals. And I worked at the bank. I advised some of the biggest neurosurgeons and doctors here in Santa Clarita, in the Antelope Valley, and in San Diego. And I was talking to them about their businesses, and I didn't even know about all this stuff. You know, the banks are there to lend money. They're not there to help you save money. So again, these are the different options that are available to consumers. Okay, let's talk about market losses. Okay, losing money can hurt more than what a lot of people think. So we're going to use this example. I'm going to pick on Alan here for a second. So let's just say Alan has $100. He says, Richard, I want to throw it into Lyft because I heard Lyft is going public. So take my $100 and throw it into Lyft. Okay, Alan, let's do that. So Lyft goes public, and instantly the Lyft tanks. Okay, that actually happened. And so Alan's $100 lost 50%. Alan now has $50. Okay, but Alan understood that because he knew that it's a variable account. He can make money, but he can lose money. So the question is, what rate of return does Alan have to get in order to get his $50 back to $100? Well, most people think, hey, Alan, if you lost 50%, all you got to do is gain 50%. What happens is if you're at $50 and you gain 50%, you're only gaining $25. So Alan is at 75, not his original 100. Alan has to go from losing 50%, now he has to gain 100% in order to get back to his initial $100 investment. And that's what can really, it happens all the time. And I sat down recently with a teacher in Quartz Hill High School, and we did the math, and her balance in her 403B is exactly the amount of money she's put in there over the last 35 years. She's earned, over the last 30 to 35 years, she's earned 0 interest on average. And she wants to retire next year. And so she was crying to me, and we were able to, get a plan for her and lock in her principal and protect it from any sort of losses. But she was sad. She's like, Richard, I wish you were here earlier in my life. I said, I wish I was too, but I was in diapers when you first started working. So, but again, this is my crusade. This is my desire. I want to create financial literacy. Again, growing up on welfare, I thought money was this mythical unicorn. I've heard people talk about it, but I've never seen it. And so I decided that I wanted to learn how money worked. I mean, it's just like working on a car. I wanted to figure out how my car worked. And so that's why I have such a passion for financial literacy. Last thing I want to educate you guys on is taxes. Uncle Sam's going to get his piece. There's no way around it. okay? But there are ways to limit the effect that taxes have on your money. So there's 3 types of accounts you can choose from. There is a 4th one, but it's illegal. We're not going to talk about that. So there's taxable accounts, there's tax-deferred accounts, and there's tax-exempt accounts. Now, a taxable account on the left, that's going to be your checking, your savings, stocks, bonds, money market, anything not in a retirement account. These accounts, you're paying taxes when you put your money in there. You've already paid income taxes before you even put your money in your savings. You're going to pay taxes on the gains. It's called capital gains. And when you go to liquidate those shares, when Alan wants to take those Lyft stocks and go take his wife out for dinner, okay, he's got to sell those shares and he's going to pay taxes again. So you're going to pay taxes every step of the way on these taxable accounts. Now that's the bad news. The good news is that taxable accounts are liquid. You can go to the ATM machine at Wells Fargo and pull cash out of your savings. So that's the good news, and that's why you need a taxable account. Tax deferred, 401ks, 403bs, if you're in the military, TSP. Any military folks here? Couple, maybe? No? TSPs are 401k for military folks, okay? And how these work is no taxes when you put your money in there. You actually get a deduction. You get to keep more money now. No taxes on the way up. But when do you pay taxes on this money, baby boomers? On the way out. And are taxes higher now, or were they higher when you first put the money in there? They're higher now. Now again, I don't know what's going to happen in the future for the younger baby boomers, for the Gen Xers, and myself and my generation, the millennials. I don't know what the future taxes are going to be. They're pretty low right now. Reagan dropped them. Trump dropped them. But that's what, a 30-year span of taxes getting increased? Okay, so taxes are an unknown. And so what we talk about is that if you have a way to pay your taxes on the seed of your crop, isn't that better than paying taxes on your full harvest? And that's where the tax advantaged accounts come in. And there's 3 options for those, okay? You have Roth IRAs, you have municipal bonds, and you have cash accumulation inside of a life insurance policy. That's it. How these work is you put money in there, it's already been taxed. Uncle Sam says, hey, Alan, you already paid taxes on your little tomato seed. Thanks, we're good. Enjoy capital gains. Nope, don't have to pay those on the way out. So Alan's $1 million in his, I'm going to give you $1 million in this example, Alan. In Alan's 401k from work, okay, that $1 million is actually $1 million because it was in a tax-exempt account. Okay, and that's the concept. That's what we're teaching these young kids, because most people are like, hey, I save money in my savings, I put money into my 401k, or I'm at a school, I put money into 403b because my boss tells me to. I don't know anything about this tax advantage stuff because we're not taught this stuff. And so most working Americans work left to right. It's the wealthy Americans that work right to left. It's the wealthiest Americans who have the most amount of life insurance. And it's not because they're trying to benefit off of anybody's death. What they're looking for is a legal way to get Uncle Sam out of their money. Wells Fargo has over $18 billion of their Tier 1 capital invested in life insurance. Tony Robbins, Ed Milet, Susie Orman, and Dave Ramsey. Susie Orman and Dave Ramsey talk so much trash about life insurance, and yet they're the ones who own the most of it because they don't qualify for Roth IRAs. They make too much money. So what other option do they have? So, but again, I'm not saying that their investment strategies are good or bad. It's working for them. Them and their advisors have a specific plan for them. And again, I'm not here giving specific investment advice. I just want you guys to be educated about what's available. So that's all I have. Again, my name is Richard Hansen. I do live in the Antelope Valley. I have many clients out here in the Santa Clarita area. And like I said, we're going to be opening an office here in the next 6 to 9 months. We're looking for space right now. You can reach me at 661-576-2383. You're not going to get my assistant. You're going to get me and my personal cell phone. And that's a big value add. I will forever take care of my clients. I'm never going to pass you off to anybody else. And because I'm a millennial, I'm going to be here for a little while. I'm not going anywhere. Yes, ma'am.
I have a couple questions. At the very first, you talked when you were going into how much you would have over the lifespan of your years, you said 10%, and I thought 10%. Who's getting 10%?
Right.
And so that was my question. One question. The other one was when you were going through the tiers, and the final one was where you would be on a level, and then this is when the stock market was coming up and down, and a lot of people did put their pension plans in some of those bad stocks, and so they, when it went down, so did all of theirs, and if they were ready to retire, they were in deep trouble. Okay, so you showed the third item, which was that you would be on a level. How do you stop at that level and keep that amount? And then the third thing is IRAs. You didn't even talk about IRAs. And in our case, we had IRAs. And since we make so much less money now, we aren't even taxed on that money. And so that's something else that, you might bring up, because some people in their retirement are not going to get as much money, and they can start taking their IRA, and they have to take it by a certain time, which is what we've done, and we don't get taxed on it. So those are different things that especially the level, I'd like to know how you keep it at that level in that diagram that you showed.
Sure. Alan, can you pull up my presentation one more time real quick? So your first question had to do with 10% interest. Like, where are these people getting this interest rate? Okay. If we're looking at the average mutual fund, okay, the average mutual fund usually generates 12 to 14%. Okay. If we're looking at 401ks were only created in the 1970s. They're relatively new. Okay. 401ks on average are performing at 4%. Okay, so when we're talking about, different rates of return, okay, again, I use 10% as an easy number, but all the experts use 12 or 14% when quoting higher rates, especially when it comes to mutual funds. Okay, stocks, you can ride the stock wave, and you can have 50, 100% return on your money. But again, for simplicity reasons, I use 10%. But for people who are in a conservative type of savings or investing, they're usually they're used to seeing single-digit returns. If they go to the bank, it's less than 1%. Okay, so you got to know a guy who can guide you on where the appropriate place is to put your money to get the best rate of return on it. And then you also talked about risk management, like, hey, this indexed account. Richard, how do I protect my principal from dropping? Well, that's a great question. Nationwide, for example, has a product that locks in every 3 years. So the stock market's going to be doing this. So Alan, I'll keep picking on Alan. So he drops 50 grand into this account with Nationwide, and he's going to ride the wave over the next 3 years. On that 3-year mark, Nationwide's going to open up the bag and say how much money's in there and lock it. Now, if he put in that 50 grand, he'll never go less than 50 grand. But if that money has grown to 60 grand, 70 grand, he gets to keep that. If it's dropped, the market's dropped, he stays at that 50 grand. Okay, they're guaranteeing that principal. Okay, and during that 3-year time, if Alan thinks, you know what, this trade war, I think it's going to mess with this money. I'm at 60,000 right now, and I'm only a year into my 3-year window. Richard, I want to lock in that money. Cool, you can lock it in, but if the market goes up over the next 2 years, you're going to lose out on those. So it's still a little bit of a gamble, but I'm going to have that conversation with Alan and say, hey, where do you think your money's wide open for the next 2 years? Again, you're not losing any principal, but your gains over the next 2 years, what do you think is going to happen? Oh, I think it's going to explode. All right, then don't lock it. Let it ride. This trade war is scaring me. Lock it in. All right, we lock it in. And then you had another question about your IRAs. Yes. So you're in a great position because your income has dropped substantially. Your income taxes are next to nothing. Okay. So for you and your family, you guys are in a great position right now. Okay. Unfortunately, that's not the norm. It's not the norm. So what we're finding is that all my CPA buddies, they're finding that Americans had to pay more in taxes this year than they've had to in the past. They got more money back during the year, Okay, so there's been a lot of tweaks. And so you guys are in a great position right now. Okay, now that's good for you guys personally, but from baby boomers as a whole, Gen Xers, millennials especially, if they can somehow get rid of the taxes now, that's going to be the best play. And that's what my CPA told me when I was 16 and I was bagging groceries. She said, throw your money into a Roth IRA, don't stick a dime into your 401k because you're going to have to pay taxes on it. And I'll forever be grateful for that advice. Again, I'm not a tax attorney. I'm not telling you what to do with your tax money. I'm just telling you what she told me 16 years ago. Other questions? Awesome. Thank you, guys.